Ah, should work now. I had the sound off in the OBS. There's so many. You've got the computer sound, you've got the OBS sound, you've got the microphone sound. So there's three different sound settings where I can mute the sound and then forget that I muted the sound in one of the places. So of the Ziv and Pete, if you can confirm that I've fixed the problem, we will begin the video. Usually I test the sound with the inbuilt video recorder before starting the stream, but of course if I'm doing it through OBS and OBS is muted. There we go. Okay, so today we talk about popular support for gun control. And each of the sources, I've tried the best I can. This is my first time doing this, so I've tried the best I can to put them up on the screen for you. And if people are interested in the links themselves, you can get in contact with me. They can't hear him. Well, am I being trolled by Catboy? Yeah, I'm being trolled by him. All right, well, my intuition was correct. Let's get started. America's gun culture is often summed up in the statistics that there are more guns than people. However, according to a 2017 study by Pew Research, only 30% of Americans own a gun. 42% of Americans reported living in a household with a gun, while those who report growing up in a household with guns is higher at 48%. This suggests that intergenerational gun ownership is declining or may have declined over the last 20 years. A further 59% say at least some of their friends own guns, and 72% have shot a gun. Therefore, 28% of Americans have never shot a gun. What does this mean for gun control in America? First of all, the type of gun here is not specified. Most prospective gun control legislation would not affect pistol or shotgun owners. Such legislation instead focuses on magazine capacities and the rate of fire of automatic and semi-automatic weaponry. The strongest supporters of gun rights would be those 30% of Americans who currently own a gun. Yet how many of these would be opposed to a ban on high-capacity magazines or semi-automatic rifles? On the other hand, 28% of Americans have never shot a gun. This 28% represents the maximum number of those who might be willing to ban guns outright. However, not all of those who have never shot a gun are supportive of a complete repeal of the Second Amendment. To understand what Americans might think about restrictions on magazine capacity or semi-automatic weapons, we should look at the data on why do you have a gun. 67% said it was for protection, 38% said hunting, 30% said sport shooting, 13% said gun collecting, and only 8% said for my job. For any of these responses, are high-capacity magazines and semi-automatic weapons necessary? The answer is not entirely clear, but it should be noted that defense from tyranny or the government does not at all appear as an explicit reason. When asked about whether gun laws should be more strict, less strict, or remain the same, a whopping 60% said gun laws should be more strict in 2019. For Republicans, this decreased to 31%, and for Democrats, this increased to 86% when broken down by age. Americans aged 18 to 29 were 64% in favor of stricter gun control versus 56% of those aged 50 to 64. Should this trend continue with a 4% increase for gun control every 10 years, Generation Alpha, currently ages 8 to 19, will end up being 68% in favor of stricter gun control. It is clear that every single generation is in favor of stricter gun control, and this trend will likely continue. What is driving this shift? Let's see which one we have next. A 2011 study from Pew can give us some insight. Here the question was not phrased as stricter or less strict gun control, but as whether we should protect the right of Americans to own guns or to control gun ownership. It is important here to recognize that whereas stricter gun control can mean background checks, banning bump stocks, banning high-capacity magazines, or banning semi-automatic rifles, the question of specifically controlling gun ownership seems to indicate banning certain individuals from owning guns in toto, such as banning the mentally ill or political extremists or criminals from owning guns. While gun control in general is fairly popular, banning all guns, including handguns and pistols, is much less popular. At the same time, the number in the 2011 study may be different due to changes in support over the course of an 8-year gap. The study shows that between 1993 and 2010, support for protecting the rights of Americans to own guns rose from 34% to 46%, while at the same time, intergenerational support for stricter gun control has seemingly increased during the same period. The convergence of these two trends seems to indicate that while Americans are increasing their support for the idea that every American has the right to own guns, they are decreasing their support for bump stocks, high-capacity magazines, and semi-automatic rifles. In other words, Americans want equality in gun ownership, guns for all, but they do not want especially powerful or dangerous weapons to be accessible to anyone. The support for universal gun ownership may be increasing as a result of greater fears of crime, whether or not real crime is increasing or decreasing. At the same time, a decrease in support for semi-automatic and high-capacity guns may be the result of social media campaigns regarding mass shootings, specifically school shootings. Americans seem to be less preoccupied with defending themselves from the government and more preoccupied with defending themselves from a mass shooter or potential criminal. This indicates declining faith in the ability of the police to protect the citizenry, and at the same time a wish for the government to step in and limit mass shooters from gaining access to weapons with high-capacity magazines and semi-automatic rates of fire. Do these kind of arguments matter in a time of political tribalism? Research by Nathan P. Calmo suggests not. Calmo states, only the most knowledgeable 20 to 30% of citizens carry polar, coherent, stable, and potent ideological orientations, in contrast with partisan ubiquity. Furthermore, identities like partisanship, race, and religion are broad and strong in politics. Ideological identification, values, and policy views are relatively niche and weak. Ultimately, it might not matter what kind of arguments seem logical or reasonable. Calmo's research suggests that partisan identification, race, and religion are primary social categories which may then be rationalized by abstractions like ideology. If politics follow demographics, what are the demographic trends? Whereas America was roughly 90% non-minority in 1965, according to the US Census, it was 60.7% non-minority in 2017. This 30% drop over 52 years indicates a roughly 0.6 decline every year. When broken down by state, we can compare the data from 2017 to 2016 to see how well this average of a 0.6% decline measures up. In the difference of a single year, Nevada and New Mexico saw a 0.81 decline in the non-minority population. South Carolina, on the other hand, saw only a 0.07% decline. The only quote-unquote state which saw an increase was Washington, D.C., which saw a 0.4% increase in the non-minority population. In numerical terms, over 100,000 non-minorities died or left the state of California between 2016 and 2017 out of the roughly 14 million non-minorities who live there. Florida saw an influx of 70,000 non-minorities due to births and immigration, but Florida still saw a 0.51 decline in the non-minority population due to the relative increase of other groups such as blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and mixed-race individuals in that state. If we assume a 0.81 decline overall, nationally, it would take 13 years for the United States to become minority, non-minority. From 2017 data, that would be the year 2030. If we assume a 0.07 decline overall, it would take 153 years for the United States to become minority, non-minority in the year 2170. In 2018, the New York Times reported that 2042 or 2044 might be the most reasonable projection. What impact will this have on gun control? The 2011 Pew study showed that whereas non-minorities are 54 to 42 in favor of protecting the right to own guns, blacks are 66 to 33 against this right, and Hispanics are 75 to 21 against this right. To reiterate, whereas 52% of non-minorities favor protecting gun rights, and 30% of black Americans support that right, only 21% of Hispanics supported the Second Amendment. Data for Asians was not included, but can be found in a separate study. From 2018, the Asian American Voter Study. The study found that gun control has strong and consistent support among Asian Americans by nearly 7-to-1 ratio. Asian American registered voters favor stricter gun laws in the United States, with net support strongest among Chinese Americans and the foreign-born. And while Democrats show the strongest support, even Asian American Republicans favor stricter gun laws. When broken down by ethnicity, Asian Americans answered as follows to the statement, "We should have stricter gun laws in the United States." Japanese, 86% yes, 8% no. Indians said 84% yes, 10% no. Chinese said 80% yes, 8% no. Asian American, which I assume here means of mixed Asian ancestry, said 78% yes, 12% no. Koreans said 76% yes, 6% no. Vietnamese said 74% yes, 6% no. And Filipinos said 70% yes, 24% no. From this data, we can see that support for gun rights was highest among Filipinos at 24%, and Asian Americans of mixed ethnicity or no particular ethnic background at 12% support. For other Asian American groups, support for the Second Amendment ranged from 6% up to 10%. According to the data from the Migration Policy Institute, in the year 1960, Chinese immigrants made up only 1% of all immigrants living in the United States. In 2017, they made up 6.4% of all immigrants to the United States. This was a jump from 100,000 in a year, 100,000 in the year 1960, I should say, to 2.8 million in the year 2017. An increase by a factor of 28,000%. Besides Chinese Americans in 2017, 2.6 million Indians and 2 million Filipino immigrants lived in the United States. In total, well over 10 million immigrants of Asian background are currently living in the United States. In 2017, there were 22 million Asian Americans living in the United States. So that means 30 to 50% of Asians in America do not currently yet have voting rights and will acquire those rights as a group due to their naturalization or due to the naturalization of their children within the next 20 years. Without any increase in the, without any further immigration of Asians, without any further immigration from Asia, to make that simpler, the percentage of the voting populace, which is Asian in origin, is expected to increase significantly. While Asian Americans are certainly the most anti-gun of any group, is it possible that they could be swayed toward the Republican Party? After all, prior to 1965, Republicans often won a majority of the black vote, and yet today Democrats consistently win the black vote. It is not inconceivable on its face that through legislation analogous to what civil rights did for blacks, that the Republicans could win the Asian vote. However, in order to examine the likelihood of this happening, we must look at the data. NPR reported that in the presidential election of 1992, Asian Americans were Republicans. In 2012, 74% of Asian Americans were Democrats. In exactly 20 years, Asian Americans shifted 29% away from the Republican Party toward the Democrat Party. That means that every year, the Asian community has shifted on average 1.45% away from the Republicans and toward the Democrats. While this may not perfectly correlate with Asian support for gun control, it is at least an indication of where this group might stand in the future. If we view religiousness as a proxy for the likelihood to support the Republican Party, we can compare Asian religiousness to the general public. According to Pew Forum, on average, American Catholics state that religion is very important 58% of the time, while Asian American Catholics said it was important 64% of the time. For evangelical Protestants, the statement religion is very important received 79% approval, whether asked to the general public or Asian Americans specifically. Whereas all mainline Protestants said 53% religion is very important, only 44% of Asian American mainline Protestants agreed. In general, whereas 58% of Americans stated that religion is very important in 2012, only 39% of Asian Americans agreed. As Chinese Americans remain the largest immigrant group from Asian countries, I forgot to do this. We'll come back to that one at the end. As Chinese immigrants remain the largest immigrant group from Asian countries, it is important to note that while China is overwhelmingly secular, 22% of Chinese Americans describe themselves as Protestant, 8% describe themselves as Catholic. The fact that Chinese Americans are more Christian than Chinese living in China indicates that either Chinese Christians disproportionately immigrate to the United States, or that Chinese immigrants are converting to Christianity, or that Chinese immigrants are nominally adopting the religion of their spouse when they intermarry with other American populations, or a combination of all of the above factors. The general trend of non-minority populations moving from the Republican Party to the Democrat Party is fairly consistent across the spectrum. The site Black Demographics reported that in 2004, 38% of Black Americans considered themselves strong Democrats. 2012, 53% of Black Americans considered themselves strong Democrats. This represents a 15% shift away from the Republican Party in 8 years. At the same time, the number of Black Americans who leaned Republican decreased from 8% to 6%. The number of Black Americans who considered themselves independent reduced from 13% to 9%. Over the last 55 years, since 1965, the Black vote ranged from 82% Democrat to 95% Democrat. Given the almost monolithic support for the Democrat Party among Blacks, it is difficult for there to be any significant gains made there. However, the shift in intensity of support from 38% to 53% identifying as strong Democrats indicates a shift of 1.88% per year away from the Republicans toward the Democrats. This might be explained simply by Barack Obama's tenure from 2008 to 2012, but it does seem to indicate that it is becoming more difficult to disentangle racial self-identification from political partisanship. Might Hispanics be the group to turn toward the Republican Party? In the 2016 election, 66% voted for Clinton. Blow that up for you. And turn this off for me. 66% voted for Clinton, 28% voted for Trump. This represents a slight decline since 2008, when 31% of Hispanics voted for McCain. Millennial Hispanics ages 18 to 35 describe themselves as 37% liberal, 38% moderate, 21% conservative. By contrast, Hispanics older than 35 describe themselves as 40% conservative, 35% moderate, and 21% liberal. This suggests that younger generations of Hispanics will continue to trend toward the more liberal of the two parties, the Democrats. Furthermore, US-born Latinos, I'll give you a bit of a zoom out there. US-born Latinos are more likely than immigrant Latinos to describe their political views as liberal. Among registered voters, 32% of US-born Latinos say they are liberal, compared with 17% of foreign-born Latinos. Thus, as Hispanics become more integrated into American society, they become more liberal, not less liberal. This is despite the fact that American-born Hispanics are more likely to lean Republican, 26%, than foreign-born Hispanics at 18%. While it seems odd that a rise in liberal identification should also accompany an increased friendliness toward Republicans, this can be explained by the fact that even the most conservative immigrants tend to vote Democrat. Immigration status is an identity which, according to the research of Nathan Calmo, outweighs ideology in determining voter partisanship. The best arguments to be made for a Hispanic turn toward the Republican Party might include some appeal to the strong religious character of the Hispanic community. Evangelicals, for instance, who view the Republican Party as more Christian, might argue that the evangelical movement is spreading among Hispanics more than any other group. Data reported by Think Progress indicates that whereas only 10% of Catholic Hispanics identify as Republican, a whopping 20% of evangelical Hispanics identify as Republican. Evangelicals may optimistically argue that this religious wave will continue to sweep the community and gradually bring Hispanics over to the Republican camp. It is clear that the dominance of Catholicism over the Hispanic community is waning. However, what of the general religiousness of that community? A religious landscape study from Pew Research can give us insight. In 2007, 68% of Hispanics reported that they believe in God absolutely certain. 7 years later, in 2014, that number dropped to 59%. While still a majority, this represents an incredible drop of 9% over the course of 7 years. Should this trend continue, we might expect that by 2021, only 50% of Hispanics will believe in God absolutely certain. This marks a clear decline in religiousness by Hispanics. During the same time frame, the number of Hispanics who do not believe in God tripled, jumping from 2% to 6%. When asked how important is religion in your life, those Hispanics who responded very important dropped from 64% to 59% in 7 years, while those who said not at all important doubled from 4% to 8%. When asked how often they attend religious services, those who attended weekly dropped from 42 to 39%. Those who pray daily dropped from 60 to 58%, and those who pray seldom or never increased from 15 to 18%. The percentage who said the Bible is not the Word of God increased from 21 to 29%. Those who don't believe in heaven increased from 16 to 19%, and those who don't believe in hell increased from 29 to 32%. All of that occurred in the 7 years between 2017 and 2014. While there is some indication that Hispanics who remain Christian despite these trends will in fact increase their religious fervor and become more fanatical, this does not have this does not contradict. This does not contradict the fact that Hispanic Americans as a demographic seem to be becoming less religious overall. Clearly, race, ethnicity, religion, and immigration status all impact partisanship, which will determine the future of gun control in America. However, there are other factors which influence or correlate with support for gun control besides these forms of identity. For instance, 55% of Americans without a college degree believe gun laws should be stricter. 72% of Americans with a college degree support such measures. As having a college degree continues to increase in importance, the education of Americans will likely shift the majority ever further towards stricter gun control. Additionally, measures proposed by Democrats to alleviate the high and growing costs of a four-year degree may further increase the percentage of Americans who attend four-year colleges and who are thus more likely to support gun control. Whether we look at data on religion, ethnicity, education, or age or generational trends, all signs point towards greater and greater, let's just say greater. They just point toward greater support for stricter gun control. This does not mean that we are nearing a total abolition of the right to bear arms. On the contrary, the right to bear arms in one form or another will likely persist until the Republican Party ceases to support the issue. At some point, Republicans will not be able to win elections without gaining more support from some part of the current Democratic coalition. This surely means that the Republican Party will soften its positions. As the Democrats become more extreme, they will alienate the moderate members of their coalition, who will either choose not to vote ineffectively for a third party, or to hold their noses and vote Republican. In any case, this electoral winter for the Republicans, which will force them into a political reorientation not too dissimilar from that which occurred in 1965, is not likely to occur within the next decade. While non-minorities are projected to become a minority of the population between 2040 and 2044, because they are more frequently involved in politics in the voting process, they will remain a majority of the voting population of the country past this point. While non-minorities are only 60% of the total population, they represent often over 70% of the voting population. Therefore, we can expect that non-minorities will not become a minority of the voting population of the United States until a later date, which we can calculate using the mean of 0.6% decline per year. This means that while non-minorities may be a minority of the total population by 2040, they may not be a minority of the voting population until 17 years afterward in 2057. Even states with non-minority voting populations, such as Alaska or Hawaii, still have non-minority representatives. Take, for instance, Eric Swalwell or Nancy Pelosi, both from California and both non-minority. For more extreme examples outside of the United States, it can be noted that Bolsonaro and Vicente Fox, current and former presidents of Brazil and Mexico respectively, are of majority European descent. While it is difficult to quantify the Europeanness of politicians of mixed ancestry without conducting extensive genealogical or genetic testing, these anecdotal examples prove that the loss of majority status will not entail a loss of representation in political power. And maybe I should have said, instead of calling them non-minority populations, I should have called them the majority population. We'll have to work on the semantics there. But now we go to our second section, which is elite opinion on gun control. Let us for a moment ignore the changes occurring among the voter population and examine elite opinion. Quartz magazine reported that of the elite donors to the Republican Party, the top three families were the Kochs, Adelsons, and Mercers. Business Insider reported that the Koch brothers had a net worth of $100 billion in 2018. Most of their political donations seem to be geared toward an economic focus. For example, the Cato Institute, a recipient of Koch funding, focuses mostly on promoting free market economics. Other conservative donors include the Adelson family. Let's call them Republicans. Other Republican donors include the Adelson family, who align with the party on their strong support for Israel. Lastly, the Mercer family supports anti-immigrant and climate-denying think tanks like the Heritage Foundation and school choice think tanks like the Goldwater Institute. The publication Breitbart, which has received significant support from the Mercers, has been tough on immigration and strong in its support of Israel. While none of these activities express a strong opposition to gun rights, none of them focus on protecting American gun owners. It seems that elite Republican donors do not believe that promoting gun rights as their focus will return long-term benefits. The purported advantages of the Second Amendment which include defense against crime, defense against government tyranny, the ability to hunt for food, etc., do not seem to entice much elite support. When reporting on the NRA's biggest donors, the New York Times found, and we'll go to that, the New York Times found that its biggest support came from a $56 million donation from the estate of a dead Dr. Robert Peterson. By contrast, elite support for gun control is more active, more significant, and more widespread. Forbes reported that in 2014, Michael Bloomberg donated $50 million to Everytown for gun safety. Billionaire Warren Buffett is a board member of that same organization. In the same year, the Gates family donated $1 million to the Washington Alliance for Gun Responsibility. According to the website Open Secrets, Oprah, with a net worth of $3.1 billion, has donated to the Democrat Party and spoken out in favor of background check laws during a 2013 commencement speech at Harvard University. Forbes further reports that in 2014, Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen donated $500,000 to a campaign advocating expanded background checks in Washington state. Former Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer, valued at $32.2 billion, was a major proponent of Initiative 594 in Washington state and donated $580,000 to the campaign. The man who controls conservative TV network Fox, Rupert Murdoch, took to Twitter in 2012 to call for action on gun control in the wake of the Newtown, Connecticut shooting. Murdoch, a media tycoon worth $12 billion, wrote, "Nice words from POTUS on shooting tragedy, but how about some bold leadership action? Will politicians find courage to ban automatic weapons?" George Soros donated $500,000 to the Brady Center to prevent gun violence. Clearly, this is not an exhaustive list. It does not include all elites who support gun control, and it does not include all the actions they have taken to promote gun control legislation, and it is now outdated, having been written in 2016. One could add Tom Steyer, billionaire and presidential candidate, to the list of elites pushing for gun control. It may be objected that I have left out significant donors to the Republican Party. However, these are not conservatives, but anti-conservatives looking to moderate the Republican Party through financial influence. According to The Atlantic, these include Paul Singer, with a net worth of $1.92 billion, who promotes candidates like Marco Rubio in order to champion LGBT values, immigration reform, which is a euphemism for amnesty, defense of Israel, and low taxes for the rich. Woody Johnson, with a net worth of $1.38 billion, supported Jeb Bush as his preferred candidate in 2016. Another billionaire, Norman Brahman, joined Paul Singer in his support of Marco Rubio. According to BuzzFeed News, billionaire Catholic Kenneth Lagone said of gay marriage, "If two boys, two girls want to get married, it doesn't bother me. It's none of my business." And according to Politico, he compared anti-rich rhetoric to Nazism. Another billionaire Catholic, Joe Ricketts, contributed to Our Principles PAC, a super PAC dedicated to opposing Trump for the 2016 election. Ultimately, according to Politico, he decided to reverse his opposition to Trump on the economic grounds that Hillary would increase the federal debt. Peter Thiel, with a net worth of $2.2 billion, has attempted to remove conservative social values from the Republican Party by promoting the American Foundation for Equal Rights and GOP Proud. In 2012, Thiel donated $10,000 to Minnesotans United for All Families in order to prevent anti-gay marriage legislation from passing. The legislation failed to ban gay marriage by a margin of 1.9% of the vote. It is obvious that there are many billionaires who align deeply with the Republican Party. However, none of these elites are focused on defending traditional marriage or the Second Amendment. Most often, these elites are looking to defend Israel, to lower taxes, to promote charter schools, to promote gay marriage, to lower the national debt, and in some cases, to stem the tide of massive immigration from the Third World, possibly because it may result in social unrest or economic instability. There are no top Republican donors for whom promoting gun rights is a top issue or even a significant issue. All of them seem rather apathetic or indifferent. In a tug of war where there's only one side tugging, no matter how long the rope is, only that side can win. In this case, the length of the rope represents the gun culture of America. It is this gun culture and not much else which is funding the NRA with small donations. In terms of elite support, this lonely institution survives on a $56 million endowment from the estate of a deceased millionaire. Therefore, there is not much standing in the way of continued cultural shift toward gun control and eventually toward legislation banning semi-automatic weapons and high-capacity rounds. Does this eventuality signal the end of America? And now, since we have none of those other things left, let us head over to our script and center that there. The Virginia gun rally of 2020 occurred on Martin Luther King Day and was one of the largest and most successful Republican or conservative rallies outside a particular political campaign in recent memory. This is despite the fact that, unlike, say, the March for Life, it was a largely spontaneous demonstration organized on Facebook rather than a recurring yearly event. It had little to no institutional backing outside of the lonely NRA and surprised commentators due to the orderly, optical, and peaceful nature of the demonstration. In a world where conservatives rarely have any true wins, this was received as a much-needed reprieve from total leftist supremacy. Yet, what does it matter? Institutionally, the NRA stands alone against one side of the billionaire class, which is totally apathetic, and another side which is totally hostile to gun rights. Whatever short-term victories are possible in the long-term population demographics and elite opinion ensure the erosion of gun rights in America. If America loses its Second Amendment, it will join nations like Britain, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, China, France, Germany, and more, who have no broad protections for the right to bear arms. In general, America will be no better off, nor will it be much worse off. At present, the armed populace of America uses its rights to marginally combat crime, to promote gay marriage, to defend the lawful process of ethnic genocide against the native population, etc. The idea that the right to bear arms might eventually come to play during a revolutionary scenario only brings us closer to an empire led by Charlie Kirk. In the event that guns are banned, the military will still remain close to the Republican Party, and the result of a civil war would not change. Conservative activism in favor of the Second Amendment represents impotence and a distraction to actionable issues. Guns can be made, guns can be destroyed, but religions and nations are not so easily moved. Guns will not stop liberal excesses, but they will grant conservatives a false sense of victory and complacency. In this sense, Second Amendment activism is the enemy of an effective conservative movement. The open carry rifle is a consolation prize for the castrated American male. The inability of the conservative movement to think strategically about the Second Amendment is part of a larger problem. The conservative movement is a tactical movement, one which seeks to win elections in the short term. Such a movement will always sacrifice long-term principles for short-term gains. Thus, gays are welcomed into the conservative movement to, quote-unquote, defeat the Democrats. But all that has occurred is that the Democrats are invited into the conservative movement so that the left can become more extreme in order to maintain the two-party balance of power. The conservative movement, like most right-wing politics, is trapped within a majoritarian democratic mindset where red-pilling the normies is only the most recent iteration. In truth, history, let's say, mimetic iteration. I'm probably going to rephrase that later. Mimetic iteration. In truth, history is shaped by dynamic, creative, and fanatical minorities. The future belongs to those tribes, Mormon, Hindu, Jewish, and otherwise, who can insulate themselves from the coming social chaos and maintain psychosocial anchoring. Individuals who wish to survive must join a tribe or else give up their shares in the future for some experience in the present. For an increasing number of Europeans around the globe, it is difficult to conceive of returning to tradition when all attachments to tradition have been severed and turned against themselves. In fact, tradition is not something to be returned to, but something to be continued. The left has as its goal the dissolution of tradition in order to usher in a new man, the utopian man of Thomas More, the post-Christian man of Voltaire, the new socialist man of communism, the overman of Nietzsche, the post-racial man of Roosevelt, and now the transhumanist man. We could say maybe of Elon Musk or something. I'm not sure who goes in there. Paradoxically, this line of thinking itself constitutes a tradition which has its origins in the cult of patricide, the father killer, Odin who killed the Titan, Zeus who killed Cronus, Jupiter who killed Uranus. In earlier legends, it is Horus who struggles against his uncle Seth. In Babylonian myth, Marduk, sun god, fights Tiamat, representing primordial nature. In each case, the forces of light, the Aesir, the Olympians, Horus, and Marduk, fight against the primordial, the original, the forces of chaos, of darkness, what Lovecraft called the Old Ones and the Great Ones, who cannot be killed, but who can be imprisoned. In Freudian terms, these old gods represent the gods of nature, too crude to be ascribed a refined gender or form, which Camille Paglia called the Dionysian or Chthonian. The deconstruction of this reign of nature comes via science, in Greece with Thales, who reduced all matter to mere quantities or states of the element of water. Pythagoras reduced all spirituality to number and its esoteric meaning stripped of its particular tradition. It could be said that the Western tradition is a kind of anti-tradition. To continue in this tradition means the continued destruction of old orders and the advance of more science, more truth-seeking, more stripping away of old traditions. The Aesir in Norse myth were not themselves immortal, but ate a fruit to maintain their youth. This fruit is what Yahweh warns against, which he calls the knowledge of good and evil, and which he warns against as the key to eternal life. Which is connected. Which is connected to the key to the eternal life. And the Lord said, Genesis chapter 3, verses 22-23, Behold, the man is become as one of us to know good and evil, and now lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. From here it is common to condemn the Western tradition as pagan, as satanic, as Luciferian, and to advocate for stamping it out in favor of Christianity. Alternatively, one can reactively embrace this characterization and condemn Christianity as antithetical to the Western tradition. It may be helpful here to understand these two sides as two psychic poles of the mind, that which is instinctual, anchored, regular, and ritualistic, that which is revolutionary, creative, and chaotic. The former could refer to the mental structure of most of the animal kingdom, whereas the latter is somewhat unique to the human species. With this gift comes great opportunity for danger. Our ability to abstract and to reorient ourselves in alien ways allows for us to fetishize dreams and worship fantasies, leading up to and including our own death and destruction. Freud calls this thanatos, the death drive. This is what causes depression, self-hatred, guilt, shame, and suicide. To embrace the left without any balance gives no assurance of success. For every Kurt Cobain who burned brightly and died young, there are millions of others who threw caution to the wind and ended up in the gutter. The left is a force of destruction, just as nature is a force of destruction. In the absence of natural selection and the law of the jungle, leftism has filled nature's vacuum to reintroduce predatory dangers and pitfalls. Just as the strong man was he who could best navigate nature, the man of the future is the one who can best navigate liberalism. That will not be done by ignoring it, but by paying it its due respect. In tribal societies, a woman might have 8, 10, 12, or more children during her lifetime. And yet the size of the tribe would not change much over time. This is because out of her 8 to 12 children, only 2 or 3 would survive through childhood into adulthood and have children of their own. Thus, half or up to 75% of all children died before adulthood. Today, we live in a world where most people do not have children, not because of starvation or physical disease or predation or warfare, but because they have been conditioned with certain excuses, hedonistic and ideological, not to have children. Death comes not as a physical pain, but as a mental pain. We have abstracted beyond the need for physical strength, and only mental strength remains as the source of power. There is no return to physical strength, which has been replaced by technology. In this essay, we began with a critique of the Second Amendment, and here we recognize it as a symbol of physical strength, which is more tightly clung to as it becomes more and more painfully obvious that it has become useless. To sum it up, there is no return to the Second Amendment. We must move beyond it. So we started with data, and then we went into something a little different there. We're gonna finish up with the chat, and that'll be it for this experimental stream. Koreans forgot their rooftop days. Quantitative stream. Gadon is spinning in his grave. Whopping. They will become atheists, not evangelicals. Let's see Paul Allen's card. Link to article. Kirk's Empire is... Okay, so I will link, I suppose, here. People want to check out all the links and everything. I will post a link. We'll see what happens with that. There's the link. Kirk's Empire is preferable to Warren's Empire. I'm surprised. What is the ethnicity of the SNL woman? I do not know. I support Charlie Kirk. He's tall and Chad and rich. He looks kind of weird though. Small face. He always appears with a small Ben Shapiro on one shoulder and a Lady MAGA on the other. Kurzweil is the biggest transhumanist. Yeah, maybe we should put in Kurzweil, where we said Elon Musk, the transhumanist man of Kurzweil. Okay, well, I didn't want to say Kurzweil because I don't think of Kurzweil as a transhumanist. I think of him as a charlatan, but that's fine. I just don't think he's very intelligent and insightful. I don't think he offers anything new, original, or interesting, but that's okay. We'll put him in there for now because he's better than Musk. What do we have on here? I need to go into my filters and add in a, what are we calling it? A color correction, and decrease the saturation. It's better now. Lady MAGA is pretty trad. Dressing in drag is the last stand. I mean, let's go into here. Let's go into my console. Kirk defeating Fuentes is yet another example of Protestant superiority over the Catholic. I guess. What is the name Kirk anyway? It sounds like a Scottish name, Kirk. We might assume that he's Scottish there. Go into settings. Go into community. We'll just add that in there so I don't have to say it on stream. I don't communicate well in meme language. I think I know what you mean. You're very kind to simplify your understanding for me. I don't either, but he's always advocating for transhumanism. Yeah, if we could find someone who's like better than Kurzweil, that would be good. But that's it. It's a 48-minute stream. I'm going to stop it there. Thanks for checking in and checking out my experimental essay. It's not good. We all know that, but I'm trying. I'm trying to learn. You know, you just gotta learn by doing. So here we're doing and we're learning, and it's a good time. So that's it. I know it's weird. It's weird to not have a 2-hour stream for once. It's like strange. It's like, what's even going on? Is this even the right channel? I didn't subscribe for this, but that's the way it's got to be. We got to force ourselves to not Zoltan Istvan. We got to force ourselves to just say, you know what? Is Zoltan Istvan, is he the transhumanist guy? I don't know, but nobody knows who he is, right? That's fine. More interesting than gun stats. I was hoping you would explain your motives at the conclusion and the end. We're going to have to keep working on it. Ask more specific questions then. What are your motives? My motives are I wanted to write an essay. My conclusions are we've got to move beyond gun control. I don't know how that was unclear, but we're working on it. Everybody says I'm not a very clear person, so we're working on it. The material is entirely convincing, but what was the philosophy take? It seems a bit unclear. We'll ask a specific question. I'll try to answer it. I mean, the link, I just posted the link in the chat if you want to read the script for yourself. It's all there. If you see any issues, there's 43 pages there that people can read through of various essays. And if you have a problem with something that I've written or a spelling mistake or whatever, you can post a comment on one of my YouTube videos and I will try to fix it. All you have to do is, like, if I spelled the word individualism wrong, you copy and paste the sentence. You paste the sentence and you say you spelled individualism wrong. So that's if people want to help me out there. Where do you see yourself in 5 hours? That's a good question. If Justin were to host a live stream interviewing you, what would you talk about? Well, I've already made a video on that. I said I would discuss sexual repression. I guess we would just talk about the emancipatory in general. That he is morally a leftist who is like, well, you know, right-wing people have some good points, but ultimately I want everyone to be free and equal. So he's starting from a moral position of leftism, but then he's making concessions to data that is considered to be right-wing or reactionary or whatever. That's just who he is. So, like, he's interesting, and he also is a protected class because he is a leftist, at least for now. Like, I think Justin Murphy is going to be... It's going to be hard to censor Justin Murphy before you censor, like, Ben Shapiro. So that's why I find him interesting strategically. Now, his ideas, like, I don't agree with his moral foundation there, but I think he's, like, interesting as a person. And so, of course, I'm not coming from that position. I'm not like, how do we make everything emancipatory? That's not, like, a very interesting idea to me. But there it is. That's the thing. That's why I'm not going to ask to be on his stream, because there's so much for me to do, and it's not entirely clear what we would do. It's like, if we don't know what we would talk about, then maybe we should not do it. Maybe we should just wait until, like, he has a clear, distinct problem. Because right now the issue with my channel is that nobody knows what I'm talking about, and it's very everyone seems to say that I'm incoherent. Like, I don't, like, what I'm saying just doesn't seem to have, like, a point to it. So until we can come together and say, like, okay, here's a point, something concrete that he and I can discuss, then I think we still have more work to do. A scale of 1 to 10, how sad are you about LeBron James? Don't know who that is. But it didn't cut it, I guess. You misspelled Foucault. Okay, that's a good one. I misspelled him as Foucault instead of Foucault. Let's see. I definitely did that because I always... Foucault. Good catch, man. Too bad that Google doesn't... The spell checker doesn't recognize... Alright, you need to take it down about 15 IQ points. Sikorsky aircraft lost a lot of credibility amongst the African American community. Don't know what that means. The current political polls don't even make sense anyways. Does Justin stand while live streaming? Does he have a chair? That's something to ask him. Maybe if you wore a beanie on stream. Do you own a beanie? I don't think I do. I've certainly owned winter hats and caps. I don't have one around me at the moment. I don't know where it is. I could buy one. You know, that's possible, I suppose. So, who's this Zoltan Istvan guy? He's a transhumanist for the New York Times. He's got a flag. His name is Zoltan, which is cool. He wanted to run against Trump in 2020. He's Hungarian, a swimmer, and he was arrested, and he has a felony for selling marijuana. Let's see. He worked in real estate, the futurist, presidential campaign. He sounds like Andrew Yang, but a white guy. And he's not offering people free money. Oh, his 20-point platform includes universal basic income. He is offering people free money. Damn. Andrew Yang literally stole this white guy's platform. Wow. Amazing. That's incredible. Poor guy. Poor guy. That he made the world's first free thinker orphanage in Uganda. Okay. All right. He is an atheist. Beautiful. Beautiful, Zoltan. Glad that you're out there making the world a better place. Very, very happy to see Zoltan. Would you do... If you want to avoid censorship, I should wear a beanie? No, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's the best way to do it. Would you do a perambulation stream? Does that mean walking around? I don't think I would do that. You should invest in a beanie. Invest in a beanie. Geez, maybe you guys should pay for the beanie. Go to DLive and throw me 1,000 lemons and I'll get a beanie. Get ear piercings. Oh boy. With a name like that, he was fated to be transhumanist. Saying things that are obvious isn't usually interpreted as a time-wasting hostile act. People usually nod and make agreement noises. I don't know what that's referring to. Start vaping. Beanie, Tim Pool. It's how to stay on YouTube. He should do both. Vape with beanie, grow a neck beard, get plump. I don't think I am going to do those things. All those things will help. You know, there are certain things. At the end of the day, I think having left-wing opinions is the best way to stay on YouTube. So I would rather change my opinions than wear a beanie. Just looking at Zoltan here. Zoltan, Andrew Yang before Andrew Yang was Andrew Yang. Talking about, he is like, he was the Reddit candidate, but he's too blonde. He's too blonde for it. He's too blonde. He's too robust. Oh, he's on the Rubin Report. Oh boy, what a guy. You should start doing pranks on stream. I don't think I'm going to do pranks or trick shots. Not going to do trick shots. I'm not going to do a mukbang. Kobe Memorial. I don't know who that is. Wearing a beanie stream will cause you to subconsciously channel Tim Pool. I haven't really watched Tim Pool. Leftist look is better than leftist opinions. I don't know. I think where you want to be is like Cenk Uygur. I think you want to be or Cenk. You want to be a big, strong guy with left-wing opinions. I think that's the way to do it. The opposite is looking like, well, wearing a beanie and then being like, I'm a right-winger. I'm a conservative. I'm a fat beanie with a neck beard, and I'm a conservative. I don't think anyone respects that. Whereas you look at Cenk Uygur, I've always respected Cenk Uygur in a way. Not that I watch him anymore, but he's got a lot of stuff. Let's talk shop on this whole tennis situation. Geez, Michael, why don't you just come on the show? Why don't you just come on the show? He's an interesting character. Let's... Michael, are you in the Discord? Log in here. Let's see if I can log in. I'm gonna get Michael on the show. Michael, will you come on the show? Will you talk to me, Michael? I think you're a funny guy. If you're not gonna talk to me, then we're gonna move on. Thank Uger is foreign, that helps. I could be foreign. Do you think he will beat Roger? Haven't been keeping up. I don't want Ken channeling Tim Pool. Can you imagine him saying it's complicated every 2 seconds? Impossible. Okay, let's go into the invitations. Let's edit this. Expire never. 5 uses. And generate a link. That's just for some people. I'm feeling very how should I say? I'm feeling very generous today. He's at work. He's at work. Get back to work, Michael. You can't be distracted. You got to focus your energies on the company. So there we go. Some people you can pop in there. It's a little dead server, which is the way I like it. I like things to be quiet. I like things to be chill. I don't like things to happen. Happenings are scary. I just like things to be chill and quiet and just kind of relaxed and not really anything happening. So it was a very chill, a good chill stream, a good chill fun time. We're going to end it there. Bye-bye.